this excitation, what these vortexes are doing. How is what, if any, effect is that having on the amygdala glands?
The amygdala glands.
Did I say that right? It's the amygdala, the amygdala. Sorry, my bad. The right in between, right inside your head, an inch inside, right directly from your temples, is the two glands, which they call the amygdala.
Okay. I know the name now, but what does science say they do?
Well, they control the fight or flight mechanism. But as you start to excite it, as they call it, tickle it, which is what sometimes the Ohm principle does, which is mostly obviously for your pineal gland. But the amygdala glands themselves, when you control those through the cerebral cortex, when you start exciting them, then you train them to use common sense in the fight or flight response.
Okay. What happens in a vortex, I have found, with regards to that particular stimulation of the glands, the fight or flight response leaves. Once you make that connection, I've had people to vortex sites up here. One person I brought up, the first thing she did is started crying. And it wasn't tears of sadness, it was tears of release. Of course, I've had other people I've brought here that haven't felt anything. Two schools of thought on that real quick. Speaking of the higher concentrations or the magnetite in the inner ear fluids, I had a friend of mine that was the father of the MRI brain scan who worked for GE Medical Systems. God bless him, he's passed on now, but we were collaborating in different types of research, and he had found that women have an 80% higher level of magnetite in their inner ear fluid than what men do. So if you look back through history, females are more susceptible to the subtle energies. They're able to tap into it more. Not that men cannot experience a vortex. We just have to be a little bit more cognizant and be able to calm ourselves down and accept the fact that there's something else stimulating and going on. I have never seen anybody in a vortex want to run or get away from it. So I would say stimulating the, what are they called? The what glands? Amygdala glands. It puts you in a calm state. You don't get the fight or flight. The only time that you can really have the fight or flight is if you're in an intense outflow or in particular an intense inflow. It might get a little scary because your body actually changes. I've had times where I've stood in one and after a couple of seconds I'm getting dizzy. I had to grab a hold of it. But once you flow into it and you allow yourself to connect and feel, 100% security. Very, very safe with it.
Can you explain for us, do you know the counterclockwise versus clockwise direction of inflow, outflow?
The bulk of the vortex energy I have encountered here is counterclockwise. As it leaves the planet, it's counterclockwise. Not that it can't go clockwise, but the bulk I've seen is counterclockwise. When it reconnects, then it's going in a clockwise motion. So it's almost a as above, so below, as it reconnects back into the toroid. As above, so below. Same thing, same principle. Again, because the Earth's magnetic field has its own toroidal shape. When we connect into that toroid, that's the planet, and synchronize our own electromagnetic field that surrounds the body with the planet, that's when we're totally grounded. That is when, if we stay at it long enough, being cognizant of the Earth's toroidal field that we're in can lead us to couple and link into the universe, the galaxy's toroidal field. Everything is in the shape of a toroid, all of it. And I could make a separate talk strictly on that. There are also, you do not also have to be in a vortex up here in Sedona to do it. Raven works with a method that actually helps you stimulate the body's natural electromagnetic field that keeps you balanced in your own field. So being in a vortex is nice, it helps you. It can take you to that place real quick, but you can also learn it externally if you know how to do that. And we can cover that at another time.
Is that using then the 432 hertz frequency? frequency, or do you know?
432 has been worked with quite a bit with it. I personally haven't done a lot with it yet. I'm just starting off with that now. But the primary thing that you can do for yourself that Raven works with is sound and breathing, and that's key. As you are doing the sound, you are and then with a certain sequence and time frame of breathing with it, you're actually taking your magnetic field. If you look at a donut and you put a donut horizontally, or you look at a galaxy, the magnetic field travels around the outside of it, back through the donut hole, and back up again. Well, with Raven's method, you are taking your personal energy and you are bringing it above, bringing it back through the donut hole or 0 point, back out towards the bottom, back up to 0 point, back up to the top. So you're balancing it. You are bringing yourself to the center of it. Same thing happens with Vortex energy. It's just that her method takes you to it naturally. You can be anywhere in the planet, and by using her method, you can achieve the same thing. And again, it's all with the sounding and with breathing. 432, the actual frequency itself, there's some wonderful things that happen with it. 528 and some other frequencies, but I haven't done a lot with that yet, but it's coming down the road.
Yes.
When you talk about the general crystalline base of Sedona, it's almost like you're describing the Great Pyramid of Giza and how it was constructed. Oh,
I'm not sure of the geological structure that's beneath the Great Pyramid. It wouldn't surprise me if there is. If there is, then it would be the same effect that's happening up here in Sedona. The layer of quartzite that's beneath Sedona is huge. I don't know exactly how thick it is. I haven't gotten into any detailed reports in it. Same principle, though, as what's goes on with the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yeah, similar, same thing here. There's another interesting thing that happens in Sedona, and it's different than vortex energy. I have found out in the remote areas, in some of my favorite vortex sites, I have been picking up another signal. Now, they call it a higher Q signal, and what that means is it occupies a narrower range in bandwidth or frequency. And it's right around 8 cycles. It is not Schumann resonance. I record Schumann resonance professionally 24/7. My data goes to Massachusetts Institute of Technology where they use it, where I'm part of a program that is, there's a guy from Russia and a few other people. We have 5 systems around the planet that monitor Schumann resonance. By monitoring that, one of the Russian scientists has created an algorithm where we take all of our data, feed it into a computer, use it with the algorithm, and it will not only show where global warming is today, it'll show where it was in the past and show us where we're headed. Very, very groundbreaking research. But the other signal I record only exists in Sedona, and it's closer to 8 cycles. It's not a man-made signal. I am too remote, too far away for the grid or anything else to interfere. It only exists in Sedona. If I go out of the red rocks, it disappears, it's gone. Now the interesting thing with that, I have another friend that travels around the globe measuring similar things that I do, although her equipment is not as large or as sensitive, we'll say. She has found that same signal exists at the Great Pyramids. It also exists at Stonehenge. And what is that place for earth lights over in Sweden or Norway? Not Hazelden. Something like that. They have a lot of earth light phenomena, and that same signal happens there too. It is not Earth-based. It's off-planet. And that kind of blows my mind a little bit. It's defying everything that the engineer in me says should be happening. God, that's another thing to look at. So is that an off-planet signal by ET or from the Creator that's trying to help center people? Again, I got to back up here a little bit. When working in a vortex energy, what an outflow of energy will do for you, the human brain is made up of alpha waves, theta waves, beta waves, and gamma waves, and then there's some other ones. Gamma is very agitated. You can start trees on fire if you're in a perfect state of gamma. Beta is what we are in when we're normally awake. It's not necessarily agitated, but we're very, very in the now. Theta and alpha are very meditative states, and there's also delta, which is very low in frequency. Now, alpha and theta, when your brain works, they call it a phase lock loop. Whatever external signal there is, our brains have a tendency of locking into that, and we become dominant with it. If you ever hear of people that are agitated by the grid or agitated by high power lines, they're telling you the truth, because what happens is their brains are going into a dominant state of high beta, almost gamma, because it locks into the 60 hertz power grid. And at that point, it's really bad on you. Medical science has also proven that people that raise their children under the very high tension lines, these children have a 40% higher rate of childhood leukemia versus people that raise their children away from power lines. Electricity is here to stay, and we need it for what we do, and I'm not saying get rid of it, but we have to be cognizant of where we're going to live for long periods of time. Now, because our brain works as a phase lock loop, when we're in a vortex, which is a low frequency being generated, I've seen vortex energy. Natural geomagnetism is called DC, direct current. It really doesn't occupy frequency. As soon as it starts occupying frequency, it becomes alternating. In other words, it's going through a 360-degree waveform, and it's an alternating thing. Now, when you're in a vortex, there is a frequency to it because it's spinning. That's part of it. I have seen natural outflows of energy here climb as high in frequency all the way up to 4 or 5 hertz. That's because it's cycling, it's inflowing, it's inflowing, outflowing continuously in the up and down through the donut hole in the toroid. Now, what a vortex does to you then, since it's oscillating, alternating at such a low frequency, when we are asleep at night, we can enter into a state of delta. Our bodies need at least 2 hours minimum of deep delta, dominant delta sleep per night, because then when we wake up, we feel totally rested. That is another thing that Raven's method does, and I've measured it on her, is it takes the brain into periodically a state of delta. So by using her method, you can literally, when you become proficient at it, and it's something everybody can do, you just have to do it. You are able to function on less sleep, for one thing. You have more energy because you can take yourself willingly into a state of delta during your waking state. It will relax your body, your nervous system will respond to it, and after a certain amount of time, the body goes, okay, I've had my delta rest for the night, and then physically you may only need 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep and you're ready to go. That profound of an effect with it. The vortex energy, same thing here in Sedona. It takes you to a dominant state of alpha, theta, and high delta. And when you're in that state, you just feel great. Meditation. When you're meditating, you're in a state of alpha, theta. If you're a Zen Buddhist monk that goes way down into delta, being in a vortex energy can help you do that too. So can Raven's method. It's all one and the same, all intermixes.
Do you feel like how should I ask this? Are the planetary shifts influencing people's brainwaves?
You mean the planet Earth shift or all of the planets, all of the changes? Yes, absolutely. Now, God, there's a million thoughts on what's happening to our planet. A lot of people, well, people like to say that Schumann resonance is increasing. I will state again for the record, it is not. I monitor it 24/7, the bass frequency, and I hate to call them harmonics. Schumann resonances, the first one occurs at 7.83 cycles or hertz per second, but it moves depending on if you're in the part of the planet that has sunlight or if you're in darkness, because the ionized layer in the atmosphere changes in height. It varies from 60 miles above the planet to 90 to 120 miles above the planet. So the first Schumann resonance will change its frequency. They call it diurnal variation, depending on whether it's night or day. I lost my train of thought. Where were we?
Talking about planetary shifts.
Oh, planetary shift. Okay. The Earth's magnetic field is shifting. It's moving. And it's moving on average of 40 miles per day. The last research, or the last thing I checked on, the North Pole is moving on average 40 miles per day. Is it going to do a pole reversal? I have no idea. Mainstream science, my friends at MIT, state that they feel a pole shift complete is not going to happen for another 1,200 years. But there again, it's an unknown. As they have found, the polar ice cap is melting at a more rapid rate than what they ever thought possible. So we could wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden the pole did a flip. Anything is possible. Two things can happen with our pole varying. It can, well, let me back up a little bit. The Earth's magnetic field is also getting weaker. It's lessening. Now, what happens when it hits 0 point? I personally don't feel it will, because we've been through pole reversals so many times before in the past, in the history of the planet, and we're still here. It hasn't vaporized. If we totally lose our magnetic field, the sun's going to burn us to a crisp. We're done. That's it. No more Earth. So I don't feel that's going to happen. Mainstream science and my friends at MIT speculate it'll weaken down to a point, wobble, and then regain, start building back up in strength again. And it's been doing that. Our planet is alive. And as far as I'm concerned, she's feminine in nature. She's evolving, she's growing, and she goes through a cycle that lasts 26,000 years. We are at the point in the 26,000 year cycle where we're going to see some major changes. The sun, in like manner, is also changing. The sun is at the point it's getting ready to do its flip. It goes through an 11-year solar sunspot cycle, and at the end of every 11 years, it flips. North Pole becomes south and south-north. That's going to have an impact on our planet. Will it spark us to do a flip? Possibly. Remains to be seen. There's no written records of the last time it did a flip. Personally, there's another thing I'm seeing with my equipment that I have at home running 24/7. We are currently passing through a cloud. I'll call it a galactic cloud of highly charged particles, positively charged particles. Their source originally came from the center of our galaxy, from the middle of it. If you look on the internet and you're able to look up the 26,000 year cycle, and you look at our galaxy and where planet Earth is in our galaxy, you will see that we follow a 26,000 year ecliptic. We're like a sine wave. At one point, we are dead nuts looking into the center of the galaxy through all the dust and all the other solar systems. But right now, we're up above the galactic plane. So we have a good shot right to the galactic core. So anything that's coming out of the core is impacting our solar system and hence planet Earth. Part of that is a cloud. It's a cloud of highly charged particles. That is having a profound effect on this planet. I think it can help people if they learn to adapt to it. It'll help them raise, if you want to use the term, raise frequency, or evolve, or to grow. It's part of it. For some people, it can undoubtedly be detrimental because they're going to wonder what the heck's wrong with them. Why do they have all of these different emotions and feelings? You just have to adapt and literally go with the flow, because as Mother Earth evolves, The solar system evolves, the universe evolves, we can evolve right along with it. We're all part of it. Again, this is the physical, it's the vehicle. What we truly are, our true essence, is electromagnetic in nature. All of it. That's another thing that's the beauty of sitting in a vortex for stabilization while we go through the changes, as well as Raven's method. You could do it naturally anywhere. So if you're down or you feel bad or you need energy, by doing that, through the sounding, toning, whatever you want to call it, and the proper breathing, to stay centered within the toroid, then we evolve and move right along with the planet and the galaxy and the whole universe.
So how do you feel then the frequencies, you mentioned that the frequencies were, if humans could go with the emotions that they're feeling, can you elaborate on how the frequencies are affecting their emotions?
Oh, most of what has a negative aspect on people are all of the man-made signals that are out there. Predominantly the power grid, which again is high beta, very agitated state. We have that wherever you have electricity, our brains are being subjected to it continuously. So our brain is going to lock into that and sync with it. In the same token, you have cell phones that are very high up in the microwave spectrum. They affect us on a cellular level, and that's another story unto itself. On the emotional level, although from a cellular level, our cells literally talk to and are connected to our emotional states and everything else, the whole body's connected through the toroidal shape electromagnetic field, the data highway that surrounds the body. Affecting the emotional, I would say the power grid is one of the worst things that there are for it. The power grid also puts out harmonics. It's not clean power, they call it dirty power. The harmonics, it puts our bodies into conflict. You have a primary signal at 60 cycles, which is high beta, and then you can have a harmonic, depending on whatever appliance is running in your home. That harmonic will amplify and become stronger in intensity than the actual 60 cycle power grid. So our brain is trying to go, well, what do I lock into? Do I lock into the primary? Do I lock into something, one of the harmonics? So the mind goes into conflict, and that affects the emotional. The emotional affects the physical. So everything that we're subjected to, that's primarily man-made. Anything that's naturally coming in from beyond the planet or from the planet are all things we can adapt to very easily. It's the man-made stuff that's detrimental because our bodies do not know how to adapt to it, and emotionally it can put us kitty-wampus, and that'll affect us physically. There again, Raven's method, for people that can't sit in the vortex 24/7, can take you into that balance again, where you can naturally take your body's toroidal energy field, keep it centered, keep it focused, and even though there's external signals that are trying to affect us, by staying in the center of it, it's not going to affect it. It's just a matter of training to fend it off, to keep it at bay. Keep it out there where it doesn't belong.
Could you elaborate a little bit more for us, please, on dirty energy, versus clean energy?
On the what?
On dirty.
Oh, dirty versus
power.
clean? Well, the dirt, if they were to set out to try to clean the power grid up, okay. Our power grid works on 3-phase. Most of the high lines you look at have 3 wires, and then they have a 4th wire, which is a ground return. You have 3 wires. If you look at a circle and you start up on top and you go all the way around, that's 360 degrees that you're going around on it. 3-phase, you have the power grid at 60 cycles. You have one phase here, you have another one 120 degrees out of phase, another one over at 240 degrees, and then back to 0 or 360. Everything has to do a complete sine. The only way to clean up the power grid and make a clean power versus dirty power is you have to keep all three phases perfectly balanced. It's impossible. You can have appliances connected between phase 1 and phase 2 that's drawing, and without getting too technical, a certain amount of load or current or amperage, wattage, and then you have another phase between 2 and 3 that's drawing half as much. Well, whenever you have that, it imbalances and creates horrendous harmonics. And that affects us because our brains, if we're close to it, are trying, what do I lock onto because I'm a phase lock loop, locking into whatever's external. It doesn't know what to lock into, and emotionally it can create a little bit of havoc when you go, why do I feel out of sorts? Can the utility company ever clean that up? No. There is a way to do it with what's called power factoring capacitors that balance each phase of the grid. They would have to be computer operated because at any given time during the day, it's too hard to determine how many, okay, who has this running on phase A in their home, who has this on phase B, and then have all of that monitored where it automatically switches in capacitors to balance it to keep everything in a perfect 360-degree balance. I've seen it done in businesses, but to do it on a large scale, no, it can't be done. So the point with that is, all of the things that are out there externally, we're not going to see cell phones get thrown away. We're not going to see wireless internet thrown away. iPads we're not going to see thrown away. It's here to stay. So the trick and the key to it is, how do we learn to keep our bodies in a state where it doesn't affect us? And there again, it goes right back to either sit in a vortex or do Raven's method, because it'll take you into that.
Switching to DC versus AC?
Well, the problem with DC is nice, and if you can run totally solar powered, then DC is the way to go. If I had my home set up, which I will one day, totally solar powered, I won't have anything in it that's run on alternating current. Preferably, everything will be done DC. Light emitting diodes for lamps, so on and so forth. If you do need AC to run a particular appliance, so you use what's called an inverter to convert the DC, which is very pure and very clean. The Earth's magnetic field is DC. So the electricity that a solar panel puts out is very clean. It's very natural. The body does not respond to it. When you convert it into alternating and you create that sine wave signal or square wave signal, that's when our bodies will react to it and they'll respond to it. The problem with DC is, you could run DC with two wires. You could have a positive voltage coming from the utility and a negative ground return going back to the utility, but you can't transform it. You would have to use what's called resistors, a resistive load, to step it down in voltages. Now, if it's coming at you at 136,000 or 236,000 volts DC, trying to step that down with resistors, God, that would be horrendous. AC is the best way to go, unless you're going to run totally solar powered. Now, if you're solar powered, you have DC coming into the home, charging batteries. If you have to run an appliance that requires AC, you use an inverter. The key to that is finding a proper inverter that produces clean power, and they are out there. You can get them. They're expensive. If you use a regular inverter, they usually put out what's called a square wave. It's not a perfect in-balance, in-phase sine wave. They're square waves. In order for them to create that from DC, they have to chop up the DC. So they interrupt it at 60 times per second, so it becomes 60 cycle alternating current. And that can really wreak havoc with us unless you filter it real well without getting too technical. It's best to stay as much DC as you can and to stay solar powered. And there's all types of new things in the works out there. A lot of people laugh at this. Over unity devices. They're there. I've seen them. I've worked with them. In all honesty, we don't need the grid. But that's a subject unto its own, and I'm not going to go there right now. And we probably shouldn't put that in a video or somebody will be hunting me down again.
Okay, we won't do that.
You know, we switched from DC to AC in our automobiles.
Yep.
Is that because of the same situation? We didn't have the technology of resistors to step it down?
No, we switched from, in our automotive, from DC over to alternators. It's more efficient. A lot more efficient. It's a lot less of an amperage load on the alternator. Before, when they had DC generators to charge your battery, God, they didn't last real long unless they were built real heavily. It required a lot of resources and drain on the engine to keep them putting out that type of a charge. With alternating current, it doesn't take that much of a mechanical force from the engine to have them produce 50 amps or 100 amps, whatever you want to charge your battery at. And they convert that AC over to DC using diodes that are built into the alternator. So the diodes absorb the brunt of the power required to charge the battery versus having a generator that used to suck all of the power out of the engine to keep the batteries charged up.
So the EMF fields, if that's the right terminology, within an automobile that are AC, they're still 60 hertz. How much effect is that having on us? You know?
Oh, there too, absolutely. Now that cars have computer systems on them too, when I'm out in the field recording Schumann resonance or magnetic vortex energy, I have to do everything on battery power. My Jeep that has an onboard computer, even though the engine shut off, part of that computer is still in there running, very low current draw. I have to get 50 feet at least away from my vehicle, or my sensing equipment still picks up on the EMF field that's being generated inside the Jeep from the computer running. So yeah, when you're sitting there driving around in your vehicle, you're literally surrounded in the stuff, and there's a lot of it in there, a lot of different frequencies.
Within the electrical system, you have vertical waves and horizontal waves, or vertical versus horizontal, whatever it's called. Vertical probably being more the harmful towards the human body.
Are you going with longitudinal waves, scalar waves versus?
I'm not an electrical engineer, so I don't know. I'm going from more.
See, the vertical horizontal I'm not relating to.
Yeah, I'm relating it more to some studies that I've done with regards to the studies that were done back in the 30s in France using the dowsing abilities where Chambray and de Belazal were electrical engineers, and so they called them vertical and horizontal waves of negative green. And the vertical negative green was the one that was extremely harmful to the body, which is an emission that actually comes out of an uncorrected pyramid shape. The beneficial wave being the horizontal wave. And there's a school of thought right now that is suggesting that if you neutralize that vertical wave, which is carried within these 60 hertz waves that we're dealing with the EMF systems, that you can actually neutralize that, and that electrical wave will not be harmful to the body.
Yeah. Okay, the reason why the horizontal, they call them longitudinal. Scalar is another term for them, and I know scalar isn't supposed to exist, but if you do a search on patents for scalar technology, you'll find Honeywell holds 5 patents for it, so it's there. The heart science has found, medical science has found, generates longitudinal waves, scalar waves. So part of the grid, or anything that's producing, let's call them vertical waves versus horizontal waves, is going to disrupt the body, because the heart in particular puts out horizontal waves, longitudinal waves, and if you've got a vertical thing, again, like a phase-locked loop that's interfering with it, one thing that can happen is it'll put your heart out of sync. Your heart will not be in balance. So yeah, very logical, makes a lot of sense.
There's a lot of infant deaths going on in Germany, or actually they've outlawed these heart monitors in Germany for children because they're actually stopping the heart.
Yeah, outlawing fetal monitors. I had 2 of my children when they were born were on fetal monitors. I understand the concept with it, but the energy that they were putting into the fetal monitor, consisting of both horizontal and vertical waves, the vertical would be a bad thing for it because it disrupts the natural rhythm of the heart. Totally unhealthy for it, not good.
So I have a quick question on that. When a Mac laptop emanates EMF, is it horizontal or vertical?
Both.
So is that why I'm very sensitive? I have, like, my heart goes up and down and I completely speeds sometimes, or it starts slowing down?
Absolutely. Internally in a computer, be it a laptop, be it a regular home desktop, again, you have a quartz crystal. It's synthetic. It's not natural. It's man-made. They call it the clock, and it maintains a certain clock frequency, so everything in the computer can calculate, function, and run where it's all synchronized. Even though you have that base clock frequency, it's putting out harmonics. So you're getting different frequencies on top of that one. So yeah, that can affect the rhythm of the heart. It can affect your emotions. I have a device that I'm waiting on the final patent to come in that is a vaccination against all of that. And I'm not going to go into detail on what makes it tick, not at this point. It's a vaccination that will tell us on a cellular level in the body to shut down. Don't respond to it. So where the power grid affects us, cell phones affect us, 2G, 4G, all of that means is 2 gigahertz transmit frequency, 4 gigahertz transmit frequency, and 3G that somebody wants to start developing. The reason why people get cancers from cell phones or smart meters is not because of the RF energy coming out of these devices cooking our bodies. It's the way our bodies are responding to it. Our bodies go into defense. They don't know how to defend against EMF energy, so they mutate. The cells mutate. They become cancer. Well, I figured out a way to tell the cells in the body don't respond, ignore it. It's chaos. It's background noise. We're getting bombarded by energy and noise coming from the galactic core of the galaxy, as well as all of our man-made stuff coming